When a person is wounded by betrayal, misunderstanding, rejection, or injustice, the pain doesn't just sit in the heart. It spreads into every corner of one's life. It affects the way you sleep, the way you think, even the way you pray. You begin to wonder whether the tears you shed at night are noticed by anyone at all, and whether the people who wronged you will simply continue living as though your pain never mattered. Yet in the quiet places of your soul, a whisper rises. Does Jesus see what they did to me? Does he see how they treated me? Does he recognize how deeply their actions shaped me? And in that very question lies the beginning of divine truth. Because Jesus not only sees, he remembers. He not only remembers, he responds. But his response is not always loud, not always immediate, not always dramatic. His response is wise, slow, perfect, and deeply transformative. Jesus humbles those who wronged you, not by humiliating them, but by revealing truth, exposing injustice, correcting hearts, elevating the wounded, and positioning you where their wrongdoing can no longer limit your life. There are moments when you look back and wonder how someone you helped turned into the same person who hurt you. You wonder why someone who smiled at you also spoke against you. You question how someone who held your hand on the good days could turn their back on you on the worst days. People change, hearts change, loyalties shift, but Jesus remains constant. He was present in every moment they misunderstood you. He was standing beside you when they falsely judged you. He listened to every conversation you didn't hear. He watched the motives behind every word they spoke. Jesus never loses sight of the truth, even when humans rewrite it. He never lets a lie take root forever. He never allows someone's mask to hide their heart indefinitely. In his own time, with his own hand, he begins a quiet process of humbling those who wronged you, not to destroy them, but to stop them from causing further damage, while elevating you toward healing, strength, and restoration. Sometimes the hardest part of being wronged is the silence that follows. The world keeps moving. People pretend nothing happened. The ones who hurt you seem unaffected. Meanwhile, you carry the weight of what you endured, and you find yourself asking why God isn't acting faster. But Jesus does not move according to human impatience. He moves according to eternal timing. He allows certain seasons to unfold because your pain is not wasted. It becomes preparation. Your heartbreak becomes insight. Your silence becomes strength. Your tears water the soil of your future victories. And in that hidden place, behind the scenes, where no one is watching, Jesus begins, working on the hearts of those who wronged you. He brings conviction where there was arrogance. He brings truth where there were lies. He brings clarity where there was manipulation. He allows circumstances to unfold around them that force them to confront their own behavior, not because he hates them, but because he loves justice. Sometimes he humbles people by letting the truth slowly rise to the surface. What they concealed begins to reveal itself. The lies they told begin to fall apart. Their motives become visible. Their words no longer hold the same power. Their relationships shift. People begin to see what you saw all along. What once seemed hidden becomes undeniable. Jesus does not shout the truth from the rooftops. Instead, he allows events and consequences to speak for themselves. The same hands that once pointed at you begin to tremble under the weight of conviction. The same mouths that once judged you begin to quiet down. The same hearts that hardened against you begin to soften. Jesus humbles them by showing them what you lived through and letting them feel the weight of their actions the way you felt it. But he does all of this gently, because his goal is never to crush a person's soul, only their arrogance. There will be moments when the person who hurt you begins to face confusion in their own life. They may wonder why certain things no longer work out the way they used to. They may question why certain doors are closing. They may experience the very betrayal they once inflicted on you. They might taste the same disappointment they caused you to feel. But this happens not because God is cruel, but because God is fair. When someone refuses to learn through mercy, he teaches them through experience. And even when they are going through difficulties, Jesus does not mistreat them. He simply lets the seeds they planted return to them in a way that opens their eyes. And while they go through this journey of awakening, God protects you from bitterness. He guards your heart so that their fall does not become your satisfaction, but a reminder of his justice. One of the most painful things in life is being misunderstood by those you love. It cuts deeper than betrayal from strangers. It creates a wound that none can see but Jesus. And yet, when people misunderstand you, Jesus understands you completely. He understands the intentions behind your actions, the purity behind your motives, the sincerity behind your efforts. He sees the things you tried to explain but couldn't. He sees the tears you hid from everyone. He knows your heart. And because he knows your heart, he defends it. Not always publicly, not always loudly, but always faithfully. At the right moment, he will reveal who you truly are, and no one will be able to deny it. The very people who misjudged you may one day come back with softened hearts, realizing the truth that only Jesus saw from the beginning. Jesus humbles people by showing them what they failed to value when they had you. There are people who did not appreciate your loyalty until they lost your presence. There are people who did not notice your patience until they faced someone impatient. There are people who took your forgiveness for granted until they needed forgiveness themselves. Jesus allows them to see the value of what they once dismissed. He allows them to realize that your kindness was rare, your love was pure, your intentions were genuine. When this realization dawns on them, humility begins to grow. They see the difference between what you offered and what the world offered them after they let you go. They begin to understand that they did not just lose a person, they lost a blessing. Sometimes Jesus humbles people by elevating you. He raises you in areas of life where they thought you would remain small. He blesses you in ways they didn't expect. He promotes you into places they never imagined you would reach. Not to make them jealous, but to make them aware that God's hand was always on you. They watch you rise from the very pit they pushed you into. They see your name being mentioned in rooms where they tried to exclude you. They see doors opening for you that they once tried to shut. And in that moment, they understand one life-changing truth. No one can block what God ordains. Your elevation becomes their revelation. They realize that their attempt to diminish you only set the stage for God to spotlight you. There is also a quiet and tender way. Jesus humbles those who wronged you by changing your heart toward them. You begin to heal. You begin to forgive, not because you are weak, but because Jesus gives you a strength that is not from this world. Forgiveness is not approval. It is release. It is the moment you stop carrying someone else's sin inside your soul. And when Jesus gives you this capacity to forgive, something remarkable happens. The person who hurt you becomes aware of your growth. They sense your peace. They notice your maturity. They feel the shift in your spirit. And humility begins to rise not because you demanded it, but because your strength silently exposes their weakness. There will be moments when Jesus allows your enemies to watch. The joy they tried to steal from you return to your life with greater abundance. They watch the light in your eyes come back. They watch the hope in your voice return. They see you standing again after believing they had broken you. Your resilience becomes their lesson. Your healing becomes their mirror. Your survival becomes their awakening. They realize that hurting you did not end you. It refined you. And in that realization, they are humbled by the strength God placed in you. Sometimes Jesus humbles people by letting them feel the emptiness that comes from hurting a good person. He lets them realize that hurting someone who loved them was not power, it was loss. And while they face the emptiness of their choices, Jesus fills your emptiness with his presence. He rebuilds you from the inside out. He replaces loneliness with purpose, shame with dignity, sorrow with strength, and confusion with clarity. He becomes the healer of every invisible wound. And as he restores you, those who underestimated you begin to recognize that what they tried to destroy, God himself rebuilt. You may find yourself revisiting painful memories, wondering why you had to experience such deep heartbreak. But Jesus uses every pain as preparation. He shapes your compassion. He strengthens your character. He widens your wisdom. He deepens your empathy. He prepares you for future blessings that require a healed heart. And the very people who once took advantage of your innocence may one day look at you with awe, realizing that the version of you they wounded could never survive the seasons God was preparing you for. Jesus humbles people by letting them see the difference between who you were and who you have become. There is a kind of divine irony in the way Jesus works. The people who hurt you often expect your downfall, but instead they witness your transformation. They expect you to break, but instead you rise. They expect you to remain weak, but instead you become stronger than ever. They expect you to seek revenge, but instead you walk in peace. And this contrast humbles them far more than any punishment ever could. Because when someone sees you thriving despite everything they did, they are forced to confront the reality of God's favor. And through all of this, Jesus protects your soul from becoming like theirs. You do not become bitter. You do not become vengeful. You do not become hardened. You remain soft-hearted, but strong-minded. You remain gentle, but resilient. You remain loving, but not naive. Jesus humbles people by showing them that they could not break the goodness inside you because it came from Him, not from them. As time passes, Jesus begins to shift the story in a way only He can write. He gives you new opportunities, new people, new blessings that fit the healed version of you. And the people who wronged you begin to see that the story they tried to end became the beginning of something greater. They see that their rejection redirected you. Their betrayal pushed you into purpose. Their misunderstanding led you to clarity. Their absence created space for God to fill your life with those who truly value you. And this realization humbles them in ways words cannot express. For some people, Jesus humbles them by bringing them back to you, not to reopen old wounds, but to acknowledge their role in your pain. They may offer an apology, or a confession, or a quiet moment of truth, not because you demanded it, but because their heart changed. They begin to see you differently. They see your worth, your strength, your growth. And even if reconciliation never happens, their humility becomes part of their healing and your closure. But for others, Jesus humbles them by removing them from your life completely. He creates distance that protects your peace. He allows separation that safeguards your future. He closes a chapter that needed to end. Their absence becomes part of His justice. Their departure becomes part of His protection. And as they walk their own path, they learn their own lessons. You heal without them. You grow beyond them. And they watch from a distance as God restores everything you lost. In the end, Jesus humbles those who wronged you by writing a story that proves they never had the power to stop your purpose. Everything they did becomes part of a testimony that glorifies God. Everything they intended for harm becomes part of a destiny that elevates you. Everything they broke becomes something Jesus rebuilds stronger. And when you look back years later, you will not feel anger. You will feel awe. Awe for the way Jesus defended you quietly. Awe for the way He restored you completely. Awe for the way He humbled your enemies without destroying them. Awe for the way He lifted you higher than the hurt. And in that final realization, you will understand the truth. Jesus did not humble them to shame them. He humbled them to save them. And He did not restore you to impress them. He restored you to fulfill His plan for your life. This is His way. This is His justice. This is His love. There is a moment in every believer's journey when the pain caused by others becomes so overwhelming that you begin to question your own worth. You start wondering whether something about you invited the hurt, whether your kindness was a mistake, whether your love was wasted on people who never deserved it. You replay conversations in your mind, analyzing every detail, searching for the exact moment things changed. You question what you could have done differently, what you might have overlooked, what signs you might have missed. The weight of unanswered questions sits heavy on the heart, creating an inner storm that no one else sees. And yet, in that invisible storm, Jesus whispers something that calms the winds inside you. You were never the problem. You were the blessing they did not know how to cherish. This truth becomes the foundation of your healing because understanding that your value remains untouched by the actions of others is the first step toward understanding how Jesus humbles those who wronged you. There are times when Jesus allows a long season of silence after someone hurts you, not to make you feel abandoned, but to separate their voice from your identity. When you are deeply wounded, the words spoken over you can sink into your spirit. The criticism, the lies, the rejection, they echo in your mind long after the person is gone. But Jesus begins His work by removing the influence of their voice. He lets their words fade into distance so that His truth can speak louder. And while you navigate that season of silence, something profound happens. You learn to hear Him more clearly. Your prayer life deepens. Your dependence on Him increases. Your spirit becomes more sensitive to His presence. And as your heart draws closer to Him, He prepares you for the next chapter, one where He not only heals you, but also gently humbles those who wronged you. It is a divine pattern. People hurt you, disappear, or walk away, believing they have won. But Jesus takes what they meant for harm and turns it into a classroom for your soul. He teaches you boundaries, discernment, patience, and strength. He shapes you into someone wiser and more grounded. The pain you endured becomes the tool he uses to refine you. And while he is shaping you, he is also orchestrating a quiet storm around the people who mistreated you. They begin facing the consequences of the seeds they planted. They encounter circumstances that reveal the truth of their actions. They face situations where their pride no longer protects them. They see relationships shift. They watch opportunities escape their grasp. And in those moments, they start realizing that their choices had deeper echoes than they expected. But Jesus never works with cruelty. His intention is not to crush them, but to awaken them. The humbling begins with internal awareness. They start to feel the weight of your absence. They realize that the peace you brought into their life is missing. They notice that the stability, encouragement, and love they once took for granted are no longer there. And often, that realization arrives at a moment when they least expect it, during a quiet night, a difficult day, a lonely moment. They feel the emptiness left behind by their own decisions. And in that emptiness, humility begins to grow. There are countless stories, both ancient and modern, of people who mistreated someone only to realize later that the person they hurt was the one who truly cared for them. And this is where Jesus steps into the narrative. He does not force self-awareness upon them. He allows life to teach them. He lets their own actions shape their destiny until they finally understand the value of what they lost. This is not punishment. This is revelation. And it is often the most powerful way people are humbled. Not by being embarrassed, not by being shamed, not by being destroyed, but by finally understanding the truth that their pride kept them from seeing. While Jesus works on their hearts, he also works on yours. He removes the bitterness that tries to settle in. He pulls out the unforgiveness that tries to grow. He softens your heart without weakening your boundaries. He teaches you that forgiveness does not mean allowing the same people to hurt you again. It means releasing yourself from the prison their actions created. And as you heal, your life begins to transform in ways you could not imagine. You start walking differently, thinking differently, believing differently. You discover strength in places you once felt broken. You find joy in things that once reminded you of pain. You experience peace in moments that used to cause anxiety. And your transformation becomes the silent testimony of Jesus' justice. One of the deepest ways Jesus humbles those who wronged you is by allowing them to watch your transformation from afar. They see you become the person they never believed you could be. They watch you rise from the ashes they thought would cover you forever. They see new blessings flow into your life, blessings they never imagined were possible for you. They observe your glow returning, your confidence rebuilding, your joy expanding. And in that moment, their own heart speaks to them louder than any confrontation ever could. They realize that hurting you was never a victory. Instead, it became a turning point that revealed their own brokenness. Sometimes, Jesus humbles people through loss, not necessarily the loss of material things, but the loss of peace. A person who hurts a good-hearted individual cannot escape inner conflict forever. There comes a moment when they lie awake at night and think about the things they said, the pain they caused, the love they rejected, the loyalty they abused, and the very memory of their actions becomes a weight on their conscience. They may not speak it out loud, but inside them, a quiet voice whispers, "You were wrong." And this whisper is not from guilt alone. It is Jesus beginning his work in their heart. You may be surprised to know that sometimes Jesus humbles your enemies by blessing them. He gives them what they thought they wanted. He allows them to chase after the life they believed would bring happiness. But eventually, they discover that without integrity, peace, and humility, even blessings feel empty. They realize that outward success does not fix inward emptiness. And that realization humbles them deeply because they see that the things they traded you for were temporary. The people they preferred over you were unreliable. The decisions they made were rooted in pride rather than wisdom. And this inner awakening becomes the beginning of their transformation. Another powerful way Jesus humbles people is through comparison, not in a worldly sense, but in a spiritual sense. He allows them to meet people who do not love them the way you did. He lets them experience friendships without loyalty, relationships without depth, conversations without honesty, and support without compassion. And in those experiences, they begin to understand the rare value of your presence. They compare what they have now with what they had with you. And the truth humbles them. They realize that the person they hurt was the person sent to bless them. And this realization often arrives long after they can fix what they broke. But rest assured, even when Jesus humbles them, He does not want you to live in their shadow. He does not want your healing to depend on their apology or recognition. He wants your healing to be complete in Him. He wants you to rise not because they regret, but because He restores. And so, He reshapes your identity in His image, not in the reflection of their mistakes. He makes you whole again. He gives you a renewed sense of purpose. He leads you toward people who value you, honor you, and appreciate the depth of your heart. As you grow, the distance between you and those who wronged you increases, not always in physical distance, but in emotional and spiritual distance. You mature. They are humbled. You move forward. They reflect backward. You find peace. They search for it. You rise into new seasons. They are left confronting the consequences of their choices. This shift is not to make you superior. It is to show the world the difference between someone walking under God's favor and someone walking outside of it. Your life becomes a testimony that humility brings restoration and pride brings downfall. For some people, the humbling process leads them back to your door, not necessarily to reconcile, but to acknowledge your worth. They may apologize. They may confess. They may express regret. They may admit their mistakes. Their words may tremble with sincerity. They may look at you with eyes that finally see the pain they caused. And while this moment can be emotional, remember, Jesus does not humble people to bring them to their knees before you, but to bring them to truth. Their apology is not meant to reopen a closed chapter. It is meant to bring closure. A humble heart is a healed heart. And sometimes Jesus allows this moment for both of you to walk in peace. But for others, the humbling happens without reconciliation. They may never apologize. They may never speak the truth out loud. They may never return to confront the past. But their life tells the story. Their demeanor changes. Their confidence shifts. They carry an unspoken awareness of their wrongs. They treat others differently because of what they learned from hurting you. Their pride softens. Their attitude changes. And even without a single word, humility finds them. And then, there are those Jesus humbles by separating them from you permanently. Not out of anger, but out of protection. He removes them from your path so they can no longer influence your journey. He closes doors that once stayed open too long. He reroutes your destiny away from their chaos, away from their immaturity, away from their selfishness. And as your life flourishes without them, they realize the role they played in your pain. They see that Jesus shielded you from further wounds. They recognize that losing you was not an accident. It was divine intervention. And that awareness humbles them deeply. Throughout all of this, Jesus protects your heart. He doesn't allow bitterness to grow roots. He doesn't allow revenge to shape your actions. He doesn't allow anger to poison your future. Instead, He guides you toward a place of strength where you can look back without tears, speak about your past without shaking, and think about those who wronged you without hatred. This level of peace is not human. It is supernatural. It is the evidence of Jesus' presence. And it is one of the most powerful ways He humbles those who hurt you. Because when they see you fully healed, deeply joyful, and spiritually strong, they cannot deny the hand of God on your life. There are moments when Jesus allows you to encounter those who wronged you again, not for unfinished business, but for closure. You may see them across a room, and instead of anxiety, you feel calm. You may hear their name, and instead of pain, you feel nothing. You may reflect on what they did, and instead of anger, you feel gratitude for the lessons learned. This is the moment you realize Jesus has completed your healing. And though they may never speak it, they feel humbled by the person you have become. They see strength where they once saw vulnerability. They see confidence where they once saw insecurity. They see growth where they once saw brokenness. And this silent transformation humbles them more deeply than any confrontation could. What they meant to destroy, Jesus used to rebuild. What they meant to weaken, Jesus used to strengthen. What they meant to silence, Jesus used to empower. And as your life continues to unfold, Jesus keeps writing chapters that show the world the difference between human betrayal and divine restoration. People may have wounded you, but Jesus heals you. People may have rejected you, but Jesus chooses you. People may have abandoned you, but Jesus holds you. And the contrast between their actions and his goodness becomes the ultimate humbling. In the end, Jesus does not humble those who wronged you to bring you pride. He humbles them to bring you peace. He humbles them to protect your life. He humbles them to reveal his justice. He humbles them to show the world that hurting a faithful heart never leads to victory. He humbles them because humility is the pathway to transformation. And as they walk that path, you walk your own path of healing, growth, and divine elevation. This is his way. This is his justice. This is his love. There comes a moment in your journey when the past no longer pulls you backward, but gently pushes you forward. A moment when the memories of what they did no longer sting with the same intensity. Because Jesus has done something inside you that no person could undo. You begin to see your story not as a collection of painful chapters, but as evidence of the way God carried you through every valley, every betrayal, and every wound that once felt impossible to heal. And as this transformation takes place inside your heart, something profound begins to happen on the outside as well. Jesus continues his quiet, gentle, but undeniable work of humbling those who wronged you, not by tearing them down, but by lifting you up so clearly that no one can deny his hand upon your life. There is a unique kind of awe that people experience when they realize that the person they once underestimated has become someone they could never have imagined. Those who hurt you watch from a distance as your character develops. Your spirit strengthens, and your life expands. They see you stepping into opportunities they never believed you would reach. They witness the joy returning to your face. They observe how the heaviness that once overwhelmed you has transformed into a peace that radiates from within. And even though they may not say it out loud, they are humbled by the realization that the person they wounded did not break. They blossomed. One of the most beautiful ways Jesus humbles those who wronged you is by allowing them to see the fullness of your healing. They remember the version of you who cried in silence, who questioned your worth, who felt like life was collapsing around you because of the hurt they caused. But now they see someone different, someone stronger, wiser, more grounded, and more confident. They see a person who no longer carries the emotional weight that once crushed your spirit. And in their heart, they feel a quiet conviction. Because your transformation reveals the truth about their actions. They realize that while they may have contributed to your pain, they had no power over your destiny. And that revelation humbles them more deeply than anything else. Yet in all of this, Jesus protects your heart from the temptation to feel superior. He guards your spirit so that your healing remains pure. He reminds you that your rise is not proof of their downfall, but proof of his love for you. And it is this purity that humbles them even further. Because while some people expect the ones they hurt to become bitter or hardened, they are shocked to see you walking with grace. They expect resentment, but they see compassion. They expect you to gloat, but you remain humble. They expect you to seek revenge, but you seek peace. And this contrast between their expectations and your reality becomes a mirror that reflects their own shortcomings back to them. That mirror is one of Jesus' most powerful instruments of humility. As life goes on, there may come a moment when those who wronged you attempt to return in some way, sometimes quietly, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes with tears in their eyes. They approach with the weight of their decisions resting heavily on their conscience. They may not know how to begin. They may struggle to find the right words. They may look at you with guilt, regret, or even fear of how you will respond. But Jesus has prepared your heart for this moment, not so you can reopen old wounds, but so you can close them completely. And when that moment comes, you stand in front of them not as the wounded version of yourself, but as the healed version. They see someone who has grown past the pain. They see someone who has matured beyond anger. They see someone whose identity is no longer tied to what they did. And this realization humbles them even more deeply than an apology ever could. For some, the humbling comes through gratitude. They wake up one day and realize how much they lost when they mistreated you. They remember the support you offered, the kindness you gave, the patience you carried, and the love you poured out. They realize that the qualities they once overlooked were rare and precious. And as they see your life flourishing, they understand the magnitude of their loss. But Jesus does not reveal this to punish them. He reveals it so they can change, so they can grow, so they can become better. Because even the ones who hurt you are still his children. and his goal is always restoration, not destruction. There are times when Jesus allows the humbling to happen. Through their own life experiences, they may face betrayal from someone they trusted. And in that moment, they finally understand what you felt. They may encounter situations where their intentions are misunderstood, and suddenly they recognize the pain of being misjudged. They may experience abandonment at a moment they needed support, and the memory of how they abandoned you becomes a lesson etched into their soul. These experiences do not come from cruelty. They come from grace. They come from Jesus' desire to transform hearts through empathy. And although these experiences can be painful for them, they become stepping stones toward humility and maturity. Sometimes, Jesus humbles them by blessing you with the very things they said you would never have. They may have doubted your abilities, yet they watch you succeed. They may have dismissed your dreams, yet they see them becoming reality. They may have spoken words that belittled your value, yet now they see others celebrating you. And as these blessings unfold in your life, the contrast between their expectations and your reality becomes undeniable. They realize that their words never determined your worth. Their rejection never altered God's plan. Their betrayal never stopped your growth. And witnessing this becomes an emotional turning point in their heart. But the most powerful humbling often happens in silence. There will be no dramatic confrontation, no emotional scene, no intense conversation. Instead, life quietly brings them face to face with the truth. Perhaps they see a picture of you smiling again, or hear from someone how well you're doing, or scroll past something you posted with confidence and joy. And in that subtle moment, something inside them shifts. They realize that hurting you did not break you, it awakened something powerful within you. They see that Jesus rebuilt you in ways they never imagined. And that silent humbling is often the most transformative. Yet the final and deepest part of Jesus' humbling process is not about them at all. It is about you stepping into the most peaceful version of yourself. It is about Jesus bringing you to a place where you no longer define your life by who hurt you, but by who healed you. You reach a point where the past becomes a testimony, not a burden, where your scars become symbols of survival, not reminders of suffering, where your story becomes a message of hope, not a cycle of pain. And it is in this elevated, healed, restored place that Jesus gives you the greatest gift: freedom. Freedom from what they did, freedom from what they said, freedom from the expectations they placed on you, freedom from the image they tried to trap you in, freedom from the guilt you carried, freedom from the tears you shed. And when you reach that level of freedom, nothing they did holds power over you anymore. This is the moment when the full circle of humility is complete. Because while Jesus may have humbled them in many ways, he has also elevated you in even greater ways. He has taken you from pain to purpose, from rejection to redirection, from heartbreak to healing. And your life becomes a living testimony that no weapon formed against you ever prospers when Jesus is the one defending your heart. There may be moments when you look back and wonder why everything had to happen the way it did, why certain people had to leave, why certain betrayals had to occur, why certain seasons were filled with tears. But the more Jesus reveals his plan, the more you understand that none of it was wasted. Every wound shaped you. Every disappointment positioned you. Every betrayal pushed you closer to him. And every person who wronged you unknowingly became part of your spiritual refinement. What felt like devastation at the time has now become the soil where your strength grew. And that perspective alone humbles those who hurt you, because they realize their actions did not define your future, they only strengthened it. And so, as you step forward into the next chapters of your life, you carry a peace that cannot be shaken. You walk with confidence because you know who walks beside you. You live with purpose because your pain has been transformed into wisdom. And you move freely, knowing that Jesus has already handled every injustice in ways far more powerful than anything you could have done. The people who wronged you have been humbled, not by force, not by humiliation, but by truth. And you have been restored, not by revenge, not by pride, but by grace. Your story is not one of defeat. It is one of divine justice. Jesus humbles and Jesus heals. And now, you walk as the living result of both.